And I'm going to open my project here. So nothing fancy here. The project lives in Autodesk Docs. So I'm going to go ahead and open my project. And if I take a look, I've already got sort of a sample wall here. We were playing around to kind of show some variations on a theme. And if I zoom out, this is just a 3D perspective view of a particular space. And without getting too ridiculous, I just threw a sample wall in there for just a placeholder for this example. Okay. So how does the process work? I go to my Inform Design tab in the ribbon in Revit, and I just start with inserting a product. We get this pop-up window, and I've got two choices. I can either consume some sample content to understand the process for those just getting started. And what's in this sample content? Sort of a different piece of different things. So I've got a staircase. We'll take a look at that here in a second. There's a door, balustrade, window, lots of different pieces, right? Just to give you a sort of an idea of how all of this works. But I'm going to use something that Jim has created for me. So let me go to my project. And in my projects, this is where he would publish this into Autodesk Docs. And if I go to his specific vendor folder, I can consume his products. So you do this one at a time, by the way. This particular window has a couple of different releases here. There's some details, right, that he can publish in that process. So that's the one I'm going to use, release 1, just to kind of show the process of updating releases. So I click open, and I've got two tabs here, configure and select. Configure allows me to generate a specific configuration based on, again, this is all coming from what Jim has published. I'm not making any of these numbers up, right? I'm going to put numbers in there that he allows me to put in. And in some cases, you can actually generate pre-configured models, if you will, as part of this process. So I pick my choices, whatever they are. Pick this model state that I might like. Currently, it's set to primary. In inventor terminology, that simply means the full detail. But as Jim will show you, we can generate many other model states, of course. But there's a BIM model state as an example, which simplifies the model for putting it inside of a Revit project. So that's what I'm going to use. I've got my choices. I click generate. Hey, just to let you know, this is going to take a minute. So that's going to generate this, what they're called variants. And in a moment here, I'll be able to choose it on this select tab. Okay, so it's generated. Go to my select tab. And now it's populating a list because we've done this a few times, and of course, preparation for this webinar. There you can see an earlier version, right, that I did. So I can insert that one. You can see the timestamps on all these. So once I pick the variant I want, I can look at the table, right, kind of scroll through. I can look at the details of that variant. But ultimately, what I want to do is insert to my project. Now, the important part is make sure there's no command running, right? It can't interrupt what you're already might happen to be doing. So let me go ahead and click insert. And that's akin to loading a family. So you can see I'm already in this place window tool. So I simply place it. And there it is. I forgot something. Let me actually give it the right sill height here. And that can be set in the defaults. We were just kind of playing around with different examples. So there's my window. It's not cutting the geometry automatically. That'll be on the roadmap, and we'll discuss that later. So all I've got to do is the standard modify and cut geometry process. And of course, now that I'm doing this live, it's not doing it. But you can see where I've done it with the doors. You'd pick the wall and then pick the door, and then it cuts the geometry. So that's the consumption process. Ultimately, as with any Revit project that we do in the cloud, was the one thing we do. We synchronize with Central, right, which means in this case up to Autodesk Docs. And this is going to take a minute. And so at some point, we'll come back and do the last step. But what happens, let me just kind of switch here to Docs. So you can see it's going to iterate here in a second. But there's also this informed design website into the project. So we're still looking at the same structure. But here I am again, this is the last step. I've placed all those things in the model. As the manufacturer, I can select on that model. That's a different one, but that's okay. I click open. This is a different sample. And if it found products in that model, they'd be listed here. So let me go back. There we go. So let me open this one instead. There we go. So I've got a couple of different products in here. So I've got a door set. They're all on release 2. And here I've got a window. I've got some windows, some on release 1, some on release 2. Uh-oh. So let me just look at the doors first. So I've got 2 doors in the model. Right, I only put those two on that wall that you saw. And then what the manufacturer would do is generate content. So drawings and or PDFs, as well as bills of materials based on either model state. Typically, you'd want it to be on the primary model state. And we can do this at the instance level and at the aggregate level. We just didn't have it set up for this example. So I make my choices. Send to allows me to put it either back into the Autodesk project or my Fusion team site. Again, this is from the manufacturer's perspective. But I'm just going to throw it into the vendors, into the Autodesk project. So I'll drop it there. So I've defined what I'm outputting. I'm telling it where to put it. It gives me a little summary, and then I just hit submit request. And all this is happening in the background. Ultimately in the cloud, right? None of this process is really happening in my desktop application. The only thing that's happening is when I go to insert the family into my project. And then, of course, now I'm working locally in Revit at that point. But everything that I've shown it's all happening up in the cloud. So we'll go through and review those once those actually publish. So that's where this trail would end. So let me back up a step. I've consumed the variants, right? That's sort of the first step. And then I've generated essentially a bill of materials for what was consumed in the model. Okay, what happens if we need to generate a new variant? So let me just get rid of this window for a moment. And I don't want to delete that door. I want to replace it with a new variant. So I go back to my Inform Design tab and I hit Replace. Sounds complicated, right? So let me pick the door that I want to replace. And I'm essentially back to that original window. But notice it says replace up here. So, okay, it knew which product to start with, right? Oh, maybe I need this to be right-handed instead of left-handed. Okay, sure. Um, Maybe I need to be clear instead of painted, whatever, right? So I'll just go ahead with changing the handing. I hit generate. And again, just like before, this is going to take a moment. Okay, select tab for status. So this should show a right-handed version. There we go. Now it still says generating, even though it's listed here, essentially creating a visualization file. Most of the stuff is already ready to go. But once this replace button populates, we'll be able to actually replace it. This is where I wish I could fast forward, but I'm at the mercy of the cloud, as it were. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, it only seems to take forever when there's an audience.
Yes. There we go.
There we go. I was just waiting for me to say something stupid, and I was ready.
Yep. So notice that in the preview here, the hand switched. So it should be right-handed instead of left-handed. And if I go and look, it's now switched. Now, when you do the replace, it's one at a time. Some thought would be, what if I just, picked one and select all similar in the view kind of thing, and replace them all? It doesn't work that way currently. You have to pick one, replace the one, and then select all the others, sort of a match properties process that we do in Revit to then match the one that's here. That's all that's happening. Okay, so I've done the replace with a new variant. Okay, what's another scenario that I might want to do? Um, what if? So here's a different door altogether, right? Compared to this guy. What if um, I wanted to replace using an existing variant? So again, going back to this same dialogue, let me just start with this guy. Instead of having to create a new one, I would just go to select. Same process, right? I would just start here and go, oh, yeah, we generated, this was the one I really wanted, right? I could pick it and hit replace, but in the sake of interest of time, don't necessarily need to show that at the moment. What about um, updates from the manufacturer? What if, so in the case I placed a version 1, right? In one instance, if I go to my update content button, this is a situation where manufacturers updated stuff. And oops, I need to see this. Um, these versions are all still marked as active, even though they might be older versions. So I could choose to replace them or not. So these Revit IDs, right, they're just showing what it is. These are all windows. And then I can choose replace with, oh, that's version 1 or version 2 or whatever the case may be. So there's a way for the manufacturer to then give us updated information. So that's what this secondary update process is. Uh, I guess the applicable situation there is if a particular product becomes obsolete because there's a newer version. Um, Maybe the manufacturer doesn't create that part anymore, or they use different materials now, right? So that original version doesn't isn't manufacturable for whatever reason, right? So there's a bunch of different reasons for change, which is why we're here. And that's the essential workflow, right? Just from the architect's viewpoint.